They say money changes people. What they don't tell you is how quickly it reveals who they really were all along. I'm Rachel, and before you hear this story, I need you to do something for me. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. Because what I'm about to share with you happened in a small town in Ohio. But betrayal, that's universal. And if you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart only to discover they were planning your destruction, then you already know how this begins. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was standing in my kitchen, staring at the coffee maker that had been broken for 3 weeks, the same coffee maker my husband Marcus kept saying he'd fix but never did. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop, and I saw a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mrs. Coleman? This is Harrison and Associates law firm in Cleveland. I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret Whitmore. The name hit me like ice water. Margaret Whitmore. My great-aunt who I'd met exactly 3 times in my life. The woman who sent me a $20 bill in a birthday card every year until I turned 18, then nothing. I'd heard she was wealthy, but our family never talked about her much. She was the black sheep, the one who left Ohio for New York in the 1960s and never looked back. I'm sorry, I managed, gripping the phone tighter. Is she? I'm afraid Ms. Whitmore passed away 6 weeks ago. I apologize for the delay in contacting you, but locating all the beneficiaries has taken considerable time. Mrs. Coleman, I need you to come to our office as soon as possible. You've been named in her will. My legs felt weak. I sank into one of our dining room chairs, the same chairs Marcus and I had bought when we first got married 8 years ago. Back when we still made decisions together. Back when he still looked at me like I mattered. I don't understand. We weren't close. I mean, I barely knew her. That may be true, Mrs. Coleman, but she certainly knew you. According to her will, she left specific instructions about you. She's been watching your life from afar, and she was impressed by your character. Can you be here Thursday at 2 p.m.? Character. The word felt foreign. Marcus had spent the last 2 years systematically destroying any confidence I had in my own character. Every day, he found new ways to remind me that I was failing. As a wife. As a woman. As a human being worth loving. I told the lawyer I'd be there, hung up the phone, and sat in the silence of my empty house. Marcus was at work, or at least, that's where he said he went every day. These days, I wasn't sure of anything when it came to my husband. That afternoon, when Marcus came home, I was cooking dinner. Pasta with marinara sauce from a jar, because that's all I had energy for anymore. He walked through the door without acknowledging me, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and collapsed on his recliner in front of the TV. This had become our routine. How was your day? I asked, the same question I asked every day, hoping for something different. Fine, he grunted, not looking away from the screen. I wanted to tell him about the call. About Margaret. About the lawyer. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way he'd been looking at me lately, like I was an inconvenience he couldn't wait to get rid of. Maybe it was the strange phone calls he'd been taking in the garage, speaking in hushed tones. Maybe it was the way he flinched when I touched him, like my hands carried some disease he might catch. Or maybe it was something deeper. Some survival instinct that whispered, wait. Don't tell him yet. Keep this to yourself until you know what it means. So I served dinner in silence, watching my husband of 8 years scroll through his phone while he ate the meal I'd prepared. He didn't thank me. He didn't ask about my day. He finished eating, put his plate in the sink without washing it, and disappeared into his office, locking the door behind him. I cleaned up alone, as I did every night, and went to bed early. Marcus would stay up until past midnight doing God knows what behind that locked door. I used to worry about us. Now I just worried about surviving whatever was coming next. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. The Harrison and Associates building was downtown Cleveland, a glass tower that made me feel small and underdressed in my Target sweater and old jeans. I hadn't bought new clothes in months. Marcus controlled our finances completely, giving me just enough for groceries and gas. Any request for money led to lectures about my irresponsibility, my wasteful spending habits, my complete inability to understand the value of a dollar. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area that screamed expensive, leather furniture, real artwork, and a receptionist who looked like she belonged in a magazine. "Mrs. Coleman? Mr. Harrison is ready for you." Robert Harrison was exactly what I expected from a high-end estate attorney: silver hair, perfectly pressed suit, and the kind of confidence that comes from handling other people's millions. But his smile was warm, genuine, and when he shook my hand, he looked me in the eyes like I mattered. "Please, sit down. Can I get you some coffee? Water?" I shook my head, too nervous to consume anything. "I'm sorry, but I'm still confused about why I'm here. My great-aunt and I weren't close." Mr. Harrison opened a thick file folder and pulled out several documents. "That's what makes this so remarkable, Mrs. Coleman. Margaret Whitmore may not have been physically present in your life, but she was paying attention. She hired a private investigator 5 years ago to keep tabs on her family members." The room seemed to tilt. She was watching me. In the best possible way. She wanted to know who her family had become, what kind of people they were, how they lived their lives. Most of what she discovered disappointed her. "But you, Rachel, may I call you Rachel, you impressed her greatly." He slid a letter across the desk. My name was written on the envelope in shaky handwriting. I opened it with trembling fingers. Asterisk, my dear Rachel, asterisk. Asterisk, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're about to receive the shock of your life. I know we barely knew each other, but I've been watching you from afar, and you remind me of myself at your age. Strong, kind, resilient, even when life tries to break you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I've seen how your husband treats you. I've seen how you struggle to make ends meet while he spends money on things that don't include you. I've seen your kindness to your elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, how you bring her groceries and never ask for anything in return. I've seen you working double shifts at that diner to help pay for your nephew's medical bills, money that your husband doesn't even know about. Asterisk. Asterisk, you are good people, Rachel Coleman. And good people deserve good things. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm leaving you $10 million. Yes, you read that correctly. $10 million. Asterisk. Asterisk, but more than that, I'm leaving you a choice. You can use this money to build a new life, to find happiness, to discover who you really are when you're not being told you're worthless every single day. Or you can stay trapped in the life that's slowly killing your spirit. Asterisk. Asterisk, choose wisely, my dear girl. And remember, you are worth so much more than anyone has ever told you. Asterisk. Asterisk, all my love. Asterisk. Asterisk, Aunt Margaret. Asterisk. The letter fluttered from my hands. I stared at Mr. Harrison, who was watching me with a knowing smile. $10 million. I whispered. 10,400,037 to be exact. Plus the penthouse apartment in Manhattan, the house in the Hamptons, and a considerable jewelry collection. Margaret lived modestly but invested wisely. She's made you a very wealthy woman, Rachel. The room was spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to process what I'd just heard. $10 million. More money than I'd ever dreamed of. Enough money to change everything. Enough money to finally leave Marcus. The thought hit me like lightning, sudden and illuminating. For the first time in years, I could see a way out. A way to start over. A way to remember who I used to be before his constant criticism wore me down to nothing. What happens next? I asked. Well, there are some legal formalities, but the money is yours. I can have the first installment transferred to an account of your choosing within 48 hours. I'd recommend opening a new account, one that only you have access to. I nodded, still in shock. Mr. Harrison, I need to ask you something. The letter mentioned that she knew about my husband. How much did she know? His expression grew serious. Rachel, Margaret's investigator, was very thorough. She knew about the emotional abuse, the financial control, the isolation. She also knew about some things that you might not know yet. My blood turned cold. What do you mean? I probably shouldn't be the one to tell you this, but Margaret's final instructions were very clear. She wanted you to have all the information you needed to make informed decisions about your life. He pulled out another folder. Your husband has been having an affair for 18 months. The woman's name is Brittany Walsh. She's 26 years old, works as a dental hygienist, and according to our investigator's report, your husband has been telling her that you two are already divorced. He's been planning to leave you for her, but he's been waiting for the right moment. Financially speaking. The world went silent. I could see Mr. Harrison's lips moving, but the sound was gone, replaced by a high-pitched ringing in my ears. 18 months. A year and a half of lies, of pretending, of making me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. All those late nights. All those locked doors. All those times he made me feel like I was imagining things, like I was paranoid, like I was the problem in our marriage. There's more, Mr. Harrison continued gently. He's been hiding money. Quite a bit of it. He has accounts you don't know about, and he's been planning to file for divorce and claim that you have no assets worth dividing. He was going to leave you with nothing, Rachel. I laughed. It started as a small chuckle and grew into something wild and uncontrollable. Mr. Harrison looked concerned, probably thinking I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. But for the first time in years, I wasn't crying. I was laughing. Because the universe, in all its twisted sense of humor, had just handed me $10 million and the truth about my marriage on the same day. If you've ever felt that moment when everything suddenly makes sense, when all the pieces of your confusion finally click into place, then you know what I felt sitting in that lawyer's office. The relief was overwhelming. And the rage? Well, that was just getting started. I drove home from Cleveland in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel of my 12-year-old Honda Civic. The manila envelope containing bank routing numbers and legal documents sat on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. $10 million. The number felt impossible, like something that happened to other people in movies or lottery commercials. But the affair, that felt real. That felt like the missing piece I'd been searching for without even knowing it. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to tell Marcus about the inheritance right away. Not until I figured out my next move. But first, I needed to know more about Brittany Walsh. Marcus's car wasn't there, which was perfect. I had time to think, to plan, to process everything I'd learned. Inside the house, I went straight to his office. The door was locked, as always, but I'd seen him unlock it enough times to know he kept the key on top of the doorframe. My hands were trembling as I turned the key. I'd never violated his privacy before. He trained me too well to respect his boundaries while he trampled all over mine. But Margaret's letter had awakened something in me. A voice that said I deserved to know the truth about my own life. His desk was meticulously organized, which should have been my first clue. Marcus was messy everywhere else. Clothes on the floor, dishes in the sink, tools scattered in the garage. But his office? Everything had a place. I started with the desk drawers. Bills, work documents, nothing unusual. But in the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a stack of tax documents, I found a prepaid phone. A phone I'd never seen before. My heart hammered as I powered it on. The text messages made me sick. Asterisk Marcus. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Rachel's asleep by 9 as usual. Asterisk. Asterisk Brittany. I hate sneaking around like this. When are you going to tell her? Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus. Soon. I promise. Just need to figure out the financial stuff first. Don't want to give her more than I have to. Asterisk. Asterisk Brittany. She seems so pathetic from what you've told me. I almost feel bad for her. Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus. Don't. Trust me, you're doing her a favor. She needs someone to put her out of her misery. Asterisk. I set the phone down with shaking hands. The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. Not just the cheating, but the way they talked about me. Like I was some wounded animal they needed to put down. The most recent messages were from just 2 days ago. Asterisk Brittany. I found a dress for the wedding. It's perfect. Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus. Wedding? We haven't even filed for divorce yet. Asterisk. Asterisk Brittany. I know, but I want to be ready. I can't wait to be Mrs. Coleman for real. Asterisk. Asterisk Marcus. Mrs. Coleman. I like the sound of that. Soon. Baby. Very soon. Asterisk. Wedding dress. They were planning their wedding while I was still married to him. I took pictures of everything with my own phone, then put the burner phone back exactly where I'd found it. Evidence. I was going to need evidence. The rest of his office revealed more secrets. Bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of. Credit cards in his name only. Investment portfolios worth more than our entire house. Marcus had been lying about our finances for years, claiming we were barely scraping by while secretly building wealth behind my back. But the worst discovery was in a file labeled personal. Inside were printed emails between Marcus and a divorce attorney, dated 6 months ago. The consultation was about how to minimize what I'd receive in a divorce settlement. How to prove I was an unfit wife. How to make sure I'd be left with as little as possible. The attorney's advice was chilling. Continue documenting instances of her instability. Her inability to maintain steady employment. Her failure to contribute meaningfully to the household. Build a case that she's been a financial burden rather than a partner. Every fight we'd had in the past year suddenly made sense. Every time he'd criticized my part-time job at the diner. Every time he'd made me feel worthless for not making enough money. He'd been building a case against me. I photographed everything, my anger growing with each page. By the time I heard his car in the driveway, I was back in the kitchen, pretending to prepare dinner. But inside, I was planning. "Hey," Marcus said as he walked in, not bothering to kiss me or even make eye contact. "What's for dinner?" "Chicken and rice," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. He grunted his approval and grabbed his usual beer. I watched him settle into his recliner, this man who'd promised to love and honor me, who'd spent the last year and a half planning my destruction while sleeping next to me every night. "Marcus," I said, testing the waters, "Mrs. Peterson mentioned seeing you downtown yesterday around lunch. I thought you had that job site in Akron." He looked up sharply. "Mrs. Peterson needs to mind her own business. And yeah, I had to come back to the office for supplies." Line number 1. There was no job site in Akron. I checked his work schedule when I was in his office. "She said you were with some young woman. A blonde." His face flushed red. "Jesus, Rachel, are you having the neighbors spy on me now? That was a client, okay? We were discussing her kitchen renovation." Line number 2. Brittany Walsh worked at a dental office, not in construction. "Sorry," I said, turning back to the stove. "I was just curious." But I wasn't sorry. I was collecting information. Every lie he told me now was going into my mental file, building towards something I couldn't quite see yet but could feel approaching like a storm on the horizon. Over dinner, I studied him with new eyes. The way he chewed with his mouth open, something that used to embarrass me but I'd stopped mentioning. The way he scrolled through his phone while eating, completely ignoring me. The way he pushed his empty plate toward me without a word, expecting me to clean up after him like a maid. When had I become invisible in my own life? "I'm going to run some errands tomorrow," I said casually. "Probably be gone most of the day." He didn't even look up. Whatever. That night, I lay in bed next to him, listening to him breathe, watching his face in the dim light from the alarm clock. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of building a life together, or at least, that's what I thought we were doing. But Marcus had been building his own life. A life with Brittany. A life where I didn't exist. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he was planning to leave me with nothing, fate had just handed me everything. $10 million that he didn't know about. freedom that he couldn't take away, power that he'd never seen coming. I thought about Margaret's letter, about her words of encouragement, about the choice she'd given me. I could use this money to simply disappear, to start fresh somewhere new. That would be the safe choice, the smart choice. But as I lay there listening to the man who'd betrayed me in every possible way, I realized I didn't want to just disappear. I wanted justice. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to lose everything, to be discarded like trash, to have someone you trust completely turn out to be your worst enemy. Marcus stirred next to me, mumbling something in his sleep. Probably Brittany's name. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved completely, you know that rage isn't a hot emotion. It's cold. It's calculating. It settles into your bones like winter frost and changes the way you see everything. I was going to tell him about the inheritance. But not yet. First, I had some planning to do. First, I had to become someone Marcus had never met before. Someone he'd never seen coming. Someone who played the game better than he did. The next morning, I drove to a different bank, one across town where Marcus and I had never done business. My hands were steady as I opened a new checking account under my maiden name, Rachel Mitchell. For the first time in 8 years, I signed something without the Coleman name, and it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten existed. The bank manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, was professional and discreet when I explained that I'd be receiving a significant inheritance and needed complete privacy. She assured me that no one would have access to the account except me, and that all statements would be sent to a P.O. box I'd rented that morning. "Is there anything else you need, Ms. Mitchell?" she asked. "Actually, yes. I need to hire a private investigator." The words surprised me as they came out of my mouth, but they felt right. If Marcus had been planning this for 18 months, I needed to know everything. Every detail. Every lie. Every moment of betrayal. Mrs. Rodriguez recommended a firm downtown, one that specialized in marital investigations. By noon, I was sitting across from Detective Sarah Chen, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "I need to know everything about my husband's affair," I told her, sliding a photo of Marcus across her desk. When it started, where they meet, what is told her about me, what their plans are. Everything. Detective Chen studied the photo, then looked back at me. "Mrs. Coleman, may I ask what you're planning to do with this information?" "I'm not planning to hurt anyone," I said carefully. "But I've just learned that my husband has been lying to me for over a year, and I need to understand the scope of the deception before I make any decisions about my marriage." She nodded, seeming satisfied with my answer. "I'll need a retainer of $1,500, and I can have preliminary information for you within a week." I wrote the check without hesitation. The first of many I'd be writing in the coming days. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for myself. Not for Marcus, not for the house, but for me. I bought new clothes, nothing too dramatic, but pieces that made me feel confident and strong. I got my hair cut and styled by a professional instead of trimming it myself in the bathroom mirror. I bought makeup that made my eyes look brighter, more alive. When I looked in the salon mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She looked capable, determined, like someone you wouldn't want to underestimate. The old Rachel would have felt guilty about spending money on herself. The new Rachel understood it was an investment. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the library, researching everything I could about divorce law in Ohio, about hidden assets and financial fraud in marriage, about how to protect yourself when your spouse has been planning your destruction. Knowledge, I was learning, was its own form of power. That evening, I cooked Marcus's favorite meal, pot roast with garlic mashed potatoes. I set the table with our wedding china, lit candles, and opened a bottle of wine. When he walked in the door, he actually stopped and stared. "What's all this?" he asked suspiciously. "Can't a wife make a nice dinner for her husband?" I replied, smiling in a way that felt foreign on my face. I hadn't smiled at Marcus in months. He looked confused but pleased. "You look different tonight. Did you do something to your hair?" Just got it trimmed. Do you like it? For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. The one who used to notice when I wore lipstick or bought a new dress. Before he started seeing me as an obstacle to his happiness instead of his partner. Yeah, he said, his voice softer than usual. You look beautiful, Ratch. The nickname hit me harder than expected. He hadn't called me Ratch in over a year. I pushed down the wave of nostalgia and focused on my purpose. Over dinner, I asked him about his day, really listened to his answers, laughed at his jokes. I could see him relaxing, probably thinking I'd finally given up on whatever had been bothering me lately. He had no idea that what had been bothering me was him, and that I'd just found a way to fix it permanently. You know, I said as I poured him a second glass of wine, I've been thinking about us lately. He tensed slightly. Yeah? What about us? About how we've grown apart. How I've probably been too focused on my own problems to really appreciate what we have. The lies came easily, which surprised me. I'd never been good at deception before. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. His touch felt like a stranger's. I've been thinking the same thing. We've both been distant. Distant. What a gentle way to describe systematic emotional abuse and adultery. Maybe we should plan a trip somewhere, I suggested. Just the two of us. Reconnect. His eyes lit up, probably thinking this would make his eventual departure easier. If I was happy and unsuspecting, I'd be less likely to fight the divorce or dig too deep into his finances. That sounds perfect, he said. Where were you thinking? Somewhere romantic. Maybe that bed and breakfast in Vermont you always talked about. We spent the rest of the evening making fake plans for a fake trip to celebrate our fake reconciliation. Marcus was more attentive than he'd been in months, helping me clean dishes, sitting next to me on the couch instead of in his recliner, even suggesting we watch one of my favorite movies. It was a masterful performance on both our parts. That night, for the first time in over a year, Marcus initiated physical intimacy. I went through the motions, letting him believe that his charm offensive was working, that I was falling back under his spell. But inside, I felt nothing but a cold, calculating fury. This was the man who'd been planning to destroy me while I slept beside him every night. Who'd been laughing about me with his girlfriend, calling me pathetic, planning their wedding while still married to me. As he fell asleep next to me, satisfied with himself for managing to manipulate his stupid wife back into compliance, I stared at the ceiling and finalized my plans. I was going to tell him about the inheritance. But I was going to do it in a way that would expose him completely. In a way that would show him exactly what kind of person he really was. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Detective Chen called with preliminary information. Marcus and Brittany had been meeting at a motel on the outskirts of town every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. They'd been looking at apartments together, specifically a two-bedroom place that would be perfect for when the divorce was final. Brittany had already started calling herself Mrs. Coleman on social media, posting cryptic messages about new beginnings and true love winning in the end. I also learned that Marcus had been feeding Brittany a completely different story about me. According to her Facebook posts and text messages that Detective Chen had obtained, I was an abusive wife who refused to work and spent all of Marcus's hard-earned money on frivolous things. I was mentally unstable, possibly bipolar, and had been threatening suicide whenever he tried to leave me. Not one word of it was true, but Brittany believed it all. She saw herself as his savior, rescuing him from his terrible marriage to his crazy wife. The narrative was so complete, so detailed, that I almost admired its construction. Marcus had thought of everything. Every angle. Every possible complication. Everything except the possibility that his pathetic, worthless wife might suddenly become worth $10 million. On Friday afternoon, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Harrison informed me that all the paperwork had been processed and the money was now available. $10 million, sitting in my new account, ready to change my life forever. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. It was time. That evening, I cooked another special dinner. This time, I invited Marcus to sit down before I served the food. I have something incredible to tell you, I said, barely able to contain my excitement. Something that's going to change everything for us. Marcus looked up from his phone, curious despite himself. You remember my great-aunt Margaret? The one who sent me birthday cards when I was a kid? Vaguely. Why? She died a few weeks ago. I paused for dramatic effect. Marcus, she left me everything. $10 million. For a moment, Marcus just stared at me. Then his face transformed in a way I'd never seen before. Not happiness for me, or excitement about our future together, but hunger. Pure, naked greed. 10 million, he breathed. Are you serious? Completely serious. We're rich, Marcus. We never have to worry about money again. He jumped up from his chair and pulled me into a hug that felt like a trap closing around me. Baby, this is incredible. This changes everything. Yes, I thought as I hugged him back, it certainly does. But not in the way you think. I decided to drive to Marcus at his job site to tell him about the inheritance. The excitement was eating me alive, and I couldn't wait another second to share this life-changing news. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy about our future together. $10 million would solve everything. Our financial stress, his mood, our marriage. We could finally be the couple I'd always dreamed we could be. The March wind whipped through my hair as I drove, windows down despite the chill. I'd dressed up for the occasion, a blue dress Marcus had complimented years ago, lipstick, even perfume. I wanted this moment to be perfect. I wanted to see his face light up when I told him we were millionaires. I was driving faster than usual, eager to get there, probably going 10 over the speed limit on Route 42. My phone sat in the passenger seat, and I kept glancing at it, thinking about calling him to make sure he was still at the site. But no, this news deserved to be delivered in person. This news deserved to be a moment we'd remember forever. The song on the radio was one we'd dance to at our wedding, At Last by Etta James. I turned it up and sang along, feeling like the woman I used to be. The woman who believed in love and second chances and happy endings. I never saw the Mercedes coming. The last thing I remember was the flash of silver in my peripheral vision, moving impossibly fast. Then nothing. I woke up 3 days later in Cleveland General Hospital, my head feeling like it had been split open with an axe. Everything was white and sterile and wrong. Tubes connected me to machines that beeped constantly. My left arm was in a cast, my ribs were wrapped, and my face felt like hamburger. A nurse with kind eyes and gentle hands was checking my fall when she noticed I was awake. Mrs. Coleman? Thank God. You've been unconscious for 72 hours. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, I croaked, then realized that wasn't far from the truth. What happened? You were in a car accident on Route 42. A Mercedes-Benz ran a red light and hit you head-on at about 60 miles per hour. The paramedics said it was a miracle you survived. The other driver walked away without a scratch. Luxury cars are built like tanks. I tried to piece together my memories. The inheritance. Driving to tell Marcus. The song on the radio. Then nothing. My husband, I said urgently. Is Marcus here? Has he been here? The nurse's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. Mrs. Coleman, you should focus on resting right now. You've suffered a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, and significant bruising. The doctor will be in shortly too. Where is my husband? I interrupted, panic rising in my chest. She hesitated. He was contacted immediately after the accident. He came to the hospital that first night, but he left after speaking with the doctors. He hasn't been back. 3 days. I'd been unconscious for 3 days, and my husband had visited once, then disappeared. The nurse left to get the doctor, and I was alone with the beeping machines and the crushing realization that something was very, very wrong. Marcus should have been here. Should have been sitting beside my bed, holding my uninjured hand, crying with relief that I was alive. Instead, I was alone. I asked the nurse for my phone, and she retrieved it from the personal belongings bag. The screen was cracked but functional. No missed calls from Marcus. No texts asking how I was doing. Nothing. With shaking fingers, I dialed his number. He answered on the fourth ring, sounding annoyed. What? Marcus? It's me. I'm awake. Silence. Then, oh, good. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? Like it was a casual inquiry about a mild headache. I'm hurt, Marcus. Really hurt. Where are you? Why aren't you here? Look, Rachel, I can't just drop everything every time you have a crisis. Some of us have responsibilities, jobs, bills to pay. Every time I have a crisis, I'd been unconscious for 3 days after nearly dying in a car accident, and he was treating it like I'd called in sick to work. Marcus, I almost died. The nurse said it was a miracle I survived. But you didn't die, did you? You're fine. You're talking. You always were dramatic about medical stuff. The words hit me like another collision. Dramatic. Marcus, I've been in a coma for 3 days. And now you're awake, so there's no problem. Look, I don't have time for this right now. I don't have money to waste on hospital visits and parking fees. You made your choice to drive around recklessly, and now you're dealing with the consequences. I stared at the phone, unable to process what I was hearing. My choice? Marcus, someone ran a red light and hit me. It wasn't my fault. Right. It's never your fault, is it, Rachel? It's always something happening to you, some disaster that everyone else has to clean up. Well, I'm done cleaning up your messes. I'm done with. I inherited $10 million. The line went dead silent. What did you say? His voice had changed completely. The irritation was gone, replaced by something sharp and hungry. Before the accident, I was driving to tell you. My great-aunt Margaret left me $10 million. We're rich, Marcus. 10 million. He was breathing hard. Are you sure? This isn't one of your fantasies. One of my fantasies? When had he started thinking of me as someone who lived in delusion? I'm sure. I have all the paperwork from the lawyer. It's real. Jesus Christ, Rachel. Why didn't you lead with that? This changes everything. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up without saying goodbye, without saying he loved me, without asking if I was in pain or if I needed anything. Just the promise that he'd be there in an hour, now that money was involved. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little holes in each square. Everything hurt, my body, my head, my heart. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of understanding, finally and completely, who my husband really was. He hadn't visited because he didn't care if I lived or died. But $10 million? That brought him running. An hour and 15 minutes later, Marcus walked into my hospital room. Not alone. Behind him was a young woman with bleached blonde hair, perfect makeup, and a figure that belonged in a magazine. She wore a tight pink dress that probably cost more than my car payment and shoes that clicked against the hospital floor like a countdown timer. Rachel, Marcus said, his voice artificially warm. This is Brittany. My assistant. Assistant. The woman he'd been sleeping with for 18 months, the woman he'd been planning to marry, the woman who thought she was already Mrs. Coleman in everything but paperwork, and he introduced her as his assistant. Brittany smiled at me, a bright, fake expression that didn't reach her eyes. Hi there. Marcus has told me so much about you. I'm so sorry to hear about your accident. She had a voice like cotton candy, sweet and artificial and ultimately empty. This was the woman Marcus had chosen over me. This was who he thought was worth destroying our marriage for. Thank you, I managed, studying her face. She was beautiful, I had to admit. Young and fresh-faced and everything I no longer was at 32. But there was something in her eyes, some calculation that reminded me uncomfortably of Marcus. So, Marcus said, pulling up the single visitor chair while Brittany stood beside him, one manicured hand resting possessively on his shoulder. Tell me about this inheritance. How much exactly are we talking about? We, like the three of us, were suddenly a team. $10,400,000, I said, watching both their faces. Plus properties in Manhattan and the Hamptons. Brittany's eyes widened, and I saw her grip tighten on Marcus's shoulder. She whispered something in his ear that I couldn't hear, but I could read her lips. Holy shit. That's incredible, baby, Marcus said, and for a moment he sounded like the man I'd married. This is going to change our lives. Our lives. While his girlfriend stood right next to him. I was so excited to tell you, I said, my voice weak and wounded. I was driving to your job site when the accident happened. I couldn't wait to share the good news. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance that my near-death experience was interfering with his financial windfall. Well, the important thing is that you're okay, Brittany said, her voice dripping with false concern. And that this wonderful blessing has come into your lives right when you need it most. Your lives. She was already planning how to spend my inheritance. Marcus, I said, fixing my gaze on my husband, could I have a moment alone with you? There are some things I need to discuss about the legal aspects. Brittany's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Oh, I can stay. I don't mind. Marcus and I don't have any secrets. The boldness of it took my breath away. She was standing in my hospital room, after I'd nearly died, claiming that she and my husband had no secrets from each other. The audacity was almost impressive. Actually, Marcus said, Brittany should probably hear this too. She's been helping me manage my finances lately. Our finances. My inheritance was already becoming our inheritance in his mind. I prefer to speak with my husband privately, I said, putting emphasis on the word husband. Brittany's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Of course. I'll just wait outside. Take all the time you need. She leaned down and kissed Marcus on the cheek, a gesture that was clearly meant for my benefit, then click-clacked out of the room on her ridiculous heels. The moment she was gone, Marcus moved his chair closer to my bed. Okay, what do we need to discuss? We need to discuss why you brought your girlfriend to my hospital room. His face went white, then red. What are you talking about? Brittany's not my girlfriend. She works for the company. Marcus, please don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. My voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 8 years of marriage. I almost died 3 days ago, and you couldn't be bothered to visit. But the moment I mention money, you show up with her. Do you think I'm stupid? He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much he could still manipulate. Rachel, you're confused. The head injury. I'm not confused. I know what I saw. The way she touched you. The way she looked at me. The way you looked at her. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I hated myself for crying in front of him. How long, Marcus? How long have you been cheating on me? The question hung in the air between us. For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me the truth. There was something in his expression that looked almost like the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, caught, maybe even ashamed. Then his face hardened. You want to know the truth, Rachel? Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Brittany. For over a year. And you know what? I'm not sorry. You want to know why? I braced myself. Because you gave up. On us, on yourself, on everything. You became this pathetic, needy person who couldn't do anything right. You stopped trying to be attractive, stopped being interesting, stopped being the woman I married. Brittany makes me feel alive again. She makes me feel like a man. Each word was a knife, precisely placed to cause maximum damage. You couldn't even hold down a full-time job. You spent your days feeling sorry for yourself and making me feel guilty for wanting more out of life. Brittany supports my dreams. She believes in me. She doesn't just drag me down like some anchor. I was sobbing now, and he seemed to take satisfaction in it. So yeah, I've been planning to leave you. I was going to file for divorce next month and move in with Brittany. She's already picked out wedding dresses. And you know what the best part is? You would have gotten nothing. Nothing, Rachel. Because you contributed nothing to our marriage except complaints and disappointment. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. But now you're useful again. $10 million useful. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer that money into our joint accounts. You're going to be the grateful, loving wife who shares everything with her devoted husband. And if you're very, very good, I might even keep you around instead of trading you in for the newer model. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He was offering to continue cheating on me, continue abusing me, continue making me feel worthless, as a reward for giving him my inheritance. And if I don't? I whispered. Marcus smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen on a human face. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you really are. How you've been threatening suicide, how you can't handle money, how you need to be protected from yourself. I'll have you declared mentally incompetent, and as your loving husband, I'll take control of all your assets to keep you safe. He stood up and straightened his jacket. Think about it, Rachel. You can share the money with me willingly, or I can take it from you by force. Either way, that $10 million is going to improve my life considerably. He walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and don't even think about divorce. I've been documenting your mental instability for months. No judge in Ohio would give you a favorable settlement. You'll be lucky to get enough money for a studio apartment and a used car. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with the machines and the white walls and the crushing weight of understanding exactly who I'd been married to for 8 years. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It gives you a solid foundation to build on. And I had $10 million worth of building materials. I spent 4 more days in that hospital bed, and Marcus visited exactly once more, to bring me legal documents that would transfer my inheritance into joint accounts. He presented them with the casual confidence of a man who'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. Just sign these, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. My lawyer looked them over. Standard stuff. I stared at the papers without touching them. Where's Brittany today? At work. She has a job, unlike some people. The insult bounced off me. I was developing armor made of cold fury and careful planning. I need more time to think about this, I said. Marcus's jaw tightened. Think about what? It's our money, Rachel. We're married. What's yours is mine. And what's yours is mine too, right? Including all those secret bank accounts you've been hiding. His face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. I closed my eyes, feigning exhaustion. I'm tired, Marcus. Can we discuss this when I get home? He left the papers on my bedside table and stormed out. I waited until his footsteps faded, then called Detective Chen. I need everything accelerated, I told her. I need it all within the next week. That's going to cost extra. Money is no longer a concern. When I was finally discharged, I took a taxi home instead of calling Marcus. The house felt different when I walked in, smaller somehow, and filled with the ghosts of who we used to be. Or who I thought we used to be. I'd barely set my purse down when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Coleman? This is Brittany Walsh. I think we need to talk. The boldness of it shocked me. I'm sorry, who is this? Don't play dumb. I know you know who I am. Marcus told me about the papers you refused to sign. We need to have a conversation, woman to woman. I'm recovering from a car accident. I'm not really up for. Coffee shop on Main Street. 1 hour. Come alone. She hung up before I could respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, but a bigger part needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I'd spent 18 months competing with a ghost. Now I wanted to meet the woman who thought she could steal my life. The coffee shop was crowded with afternoon customers, but I spotted Brittany immediately. She'd chosen a corner table with her back to the wall, a power position. She was even prettier in natural light, but there was something calculating in her eyes that reminded me of a cat watching a wounded bird. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "Can I buy you a coffee? Latte? You look like a latte person." The condescension was breathtaking. "I'm fine." "Okay, let's cut to the chase then." She leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table. "Marcus told me about your little tantrum at the hospital. About refusing to sign the papers." "My tantrum? Look, I get it. You're hurt. Your feelings are wounded. But you need to understand something. Marcus doesn't love you anymore. He hasn't loved you in years." Each word was delivered like a surgical strike, designed for maximum damage. "He's been miserable in that marriage, Rachel. Absolutely miserable. He only stayed because he felt sorry for you, because he's too good of a man to abandon someone as pathetic as—" "Stop." The word came out harder than I'd intended. Brittany smiled. "Did I hit a nerve? Good. You need to hear this. Marcus and I are going to be together whether you make it easy or difficult. The only question is whether you're going to be reasonable about the money." "Reasonable." "Split it fairly. Half for you, half for him. Then you can both move on with your lives." I almost laughed. "Half of my inheritance? For what?" "For 8 years of marriage. For being the loyal husband who put up with your constant neediness and failure. For taking care of you when no one else would." The narrative was so complete, so detailed, that I realized Marcus hadn't just been lying to me, he'd been lying to her too. She genuinely believed I was some pathetic creature who'd been lucky to have him. "Brittany," I said carefully, "what exactly has Marcus told you about our marriage?" "The truth. That you're mentally unstable. That you can't hold a job or contribute anything meaningful to the household. That you threaten suicide whenever he tries to have an honest conversation about your relationship. That you're possessive and jealous and make his life hell." I studied her face. She wasn't lying. She really believed every word. "He told you I threaten suicide?" "Constantly. He's had to call the crisis hotline 3 times in the past year because of your episodes. He showed me the documentation." Documentation. Marcus had been building a case against me with his girlfriend too. "And you believe all of this?" "Why would he lie? Marcus is the most honest man I've ever met. He could have just divorced you and left you with nothing, but he's too kind for that. He wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of, even though you don't deserve it." There it was. The final piece of his puzzle. Marcus hadn't just been planning to steal my inheritance, he'd been preparing Brittany to help him do it. She thought she was saving him from a mentally ill wife. She thought she was the hero of this story. "Brittany, can I ask you something personal?" She shrugged. "Sure." "How long have you two been sleeping together?" Her face flushed pink. "We haven't been. It's not like that. We're waiting until his divorce is final. We believe in doing things the right way." I stared at her. "You haven't been physical." "We've kissed," she said defensively. "And we hold hands. But Marcus is too respectful to take advantage of the situation. He's a gentleman." Oh my God. She had no idea. Marcus had been cheating on me for 18 months, but he convinced her they were just having an emotional affair. She thought she was the pure, noble woman who was going to save him from his terrible marriage through the power of true love. "Brittany," I said gently, "where do you think Marcus is on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons?" "Working. He has job sites in Akron." "There are no job sites in Akron. I checked." Her confidence flickered for the first time. What are you talking about? He's at the Riverside Motel on Route 9. Room 237. He pays for it monthly under the name Mark Collins. The color drained from her face. That's not. He wouldn't. I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures Detective Chen had taken. Marcus's truck in the motel parking lot. Marcus entering room 237. And most damning of all, Marcus leaving the room with a woman who wasn't me and wasn't her. A brunette in her 30s who, according to Detective Chen's report, was also married and also thought she was the only woman Marcus was seeing on the side. Brittany stared at the photos, her perfect composure cracking like ice in spring. There are others, I said quietly. At least 2 that the detective found. Maybe more. No, she whispered. He loves me. He's going to marry me. He's going to marry whoever gives him the most money. Right now, that's me. If someone richer came along tomorrow, it would be them. Brittany was shaking now, her carefully constructed world falling apart in real time. But he said, he showed me rings. Wedding rings. He said we'd have a Christmas wedding. I'm sure he did. Just like he showed me bank statements that made it look like we were broke while he was hiding hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just like he told me you were his assistant. Marcus is very good at telling people what they want to hear. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. I quit my job for him, she sobbed. I broke up with my fiancé. I told everyone we were getting married. I bought a dress. My heart actually ached for her. She was young and naive and had fallen for the same lies I'd believed for years. The only difference was that I'd had 8 years to slowly discover the truth. She was getting it all at once. Brittany, I said, reaching across the table to touch her hand, I'm not your enemy. We've both been played by the same man. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. What do you want me to do? I want you to help me make sure he never does this to anyone else. How? I leaned forward and lowered my voice. Tell me everything. Every lie he told you. Every promise he made. Every detail about his plans for my money. She wiped her eyes with a napkin, leaving black smudges. Why should I trust you? Because right now, I'm the only person in this whole mess who's been honest with you. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, slowly, she began to talk. And what she told me was worse than I'd imagined. Brittany talked for 2 hours straight, and with every word, the scope of Marcus's deception became clearer. He hadn't just been lying to us, he'd been running what amounted to a psychological con game on multiple women simultaneously. He told me you were agoraphobic, Brittany said, her voice still shaky from crying. That you rarely left the house except for your part-time job at the diner, and even that was too stressful for you most days. I almost laughed. I work 40 hours a week at Miller's Diner, plus I clean houses on weekends. I've hardly been home in the last year. But he said, he showed me grocery receipts where he'd bought special foods for your anxiety. Expensive organic stuff to help with your panic attacks. Those were for his lunches. He's been eating $15 salads while giving me $20 for a week's worth of groceries. Brittany shook her head in disbelief. He told me you couldn't handle money. That you'd spent your entire savings on online shopping and credit card debt. We don't have any credit card debt. And our savings account has exactly $4 to $7 in it because Marcus has been moving money into hidden accounts for years. With each revelation, I watched her face change. The angry, superior woman who'd called me pathetic was being replaced by someone who was beginning to understand she'd been manipulated just as thoroughly as I had. Rachel, she said finally, there's something else you need to know. About the money. What about it? Marcus didn't just want half. He wanted all of it. My blood went cold. What do you mean? He showed me documents. Medical records that supposedly proved you were mentally incompetent. He said once he had control of the inheritance, he was going to have you committed to a psychiatric facility for your own safety. The room seemed to tilt. Committed. He said it would be temporary, just until you got the help you needed. But Rachel. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I saw the papers. It wasn't temporary. He was going to have you declared permanently unfit and take legal guardianship of your assets. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what she was telling me. Marcus hadn't just been planning to steal my inheritance, he'd been planning to have me locked away so I could never challenge him. There's more, Brittany continued. He said once you were taken care of, we'd move to the Cayman Islands. He already has accounts set up there. He's been planning this for months, Rachel. Maybe years. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too crowded. I needed air. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. Wait. Brittany grabbed my arm. What are you going to do? I looked down at her, this young woman who thought she was going to marry my husband, who had no idea she was just another tool in his elaborate scheme. I'm going to stop him, I said simply. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through possibilities and plans. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made a decision that would have shocked the old Rachel. The new Rachel, the one who'd survived a car crash and discovered her husband was a sociopath, she wasn't shocked by anything anymore. I called Detective Chen first. I need everything you have on my husband's financial activities. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, property purchases, everything. And I need it fast. That's going to require some creative investigation techniques, she warned. It won't be cheap. How much? For what you're asking. 20,000. Done. I also need you to document every woman he's been seeing. All of them. Names, addresses, how long it's been going on, what he told them about me. Rachel, what are you planning? Justice, I said simply. Next, I called Mr. Harrison. I need to set up a trust, I told him. Something complex and ironclad. And I need to do it before my husband tries to get control of the inheritance. What kind of trust are you thinking? The kind that protects the money from anyone who might try to claim mental incompetence. The kind that requires multiple independent psychiatric evaluations before any changes can be made. The kind that has enough legal safeguards to make it impossible for anyone to steal. That's going to take some time to set up properly. I don't have time. My husband is planning to have me committed and take control of everything. How fast can you move? There was a long pause. If this is an emergency situation, I can have temporary protections in place by tomorrow morning. But Rachel, if your husband is really planning what you think is planning, you might want to consider involving law enforcement. Not yet. First, I want to give him enough rope to hang himself. That evening, Marcus came home with flowers and Chinese takeout, the first time he'd bought me anything in months. He was practically vibrating with excitement. How are you feeling, baby? He asked, kissing my cheek with theatrical tenderness. I know the hospital stay was rough. Better, I said, accepting the flowers with a smile that felt like wearing a mask. These are beautiful. I thought maybe we could have a nice dinner and talk about our future. Our very bright future. Over lo mein and sweet and sour chicken, Marcus laid out his vision for our life as millionaires. We'd travel the world. Buy a bigger house. Maybe start the family we'd always talked about. His performance was masterful. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed every word. I brought those papers home, he said casually as we finished eating. For the joint account transfers. I know you were overwhelmed at the hospital, but now that you're thinking clearly. Actually, I already handled it, I said. His face lit up. You signed them. Better. I set up a trust. Much more tax efficient for that amount of money. The smile faltered slightly. A trust? What kind of trust? Oh, you know, the standard stuff. Asset protection, tax optimization, estate planning. Boring legal things. I waved my hand dismissively. The important thing is that we're protected. Both of us. Both of us. Well, the trust names you as the primary beneficiary if anything happens to me. And it has provisions for regular distributions that we can use for living expenses, travel, all the things we've dreamed about. Marcus relaxed slightly. How much are the distributions? 50,000 a month to start. More if we need it. His eyes widened. 50,000 a month was more money than he'd made in an entire year at his construction job. That's incredible, Rachel. You're incredible. He reached across the table and took my hands. I'm sorry if I seemed stressed about the paperwork before. I was just worried about protecting you, protecting us. I know, I said, squeezing his hands. And I appreciate how much you care about our financial security. That night, Marcus made love to me with a passion I hadn't felt from him in years. He whispered sweet words about our future, about how much he loved me, about how this was a new beginning for us. It was the most convincing performance of his life. And the last one he'd ever give me. Because while he was planning to destroy me, I was planning something much more elegant. I wasn't going to just stop Marcus. I was going to expose him so completely that he'd never be able to manipulate another woman again. The trust I'd set up wasn't quite what I'd told him. Yes, it protected the money from anyone claiming I was mentally incompetent. Yes, it provided regular distributions. But it also had some special provisions that Marcus didn't know about. Provisions that would activate if I could prove fraud, adultery, or criminal intent on his part. Provisions that would leave him with nothing while making sure every woman he'd ever lied to knew exactly who they'd been dealing with. I fell asleep that night listening to Marcus breathe beside me, planning his destruction with the same methodical care he'd used to plan mine. But unlike Marcus, I wasn't going to hurt innocent people in the process. I was going to save them. The next morning, I woke up to find Marcus already gone. No note, no goodbye kiss, just the lingering smell of his cologne and the coffee maker still warm from use. For a moment, it felt like any other morning from the past year. Me alone in our house while he disappeared to whatever life he was building without me. But this morning was different. This morning, I had power. I was finishing my own coffee when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Brittany. I found something. Can you meet me at the library? Main branch, second floor, far corner table. Come alone. Asterisk. 20 minutes later, I found her hunched over a laptop in the library's quiet section, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her perfect makeup was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and the hollow look of someone whose world had been shattered. Thank you for coming, she whispered as I sat down across from her. I've been thinking about everything you told me yesterday, and I needed to know the truth. What did you find? She turned the laptop screen toward me. I hacked his Facebook account. Not his main one, a secret one he kept under the name Mark Collins. The same name he used at the motel. My heart stopped. On the screen was a Facebook profile I'd never seen before, with photos that made me feel physically sick. Marcus with his arm around Brittany at restaurants I'd never been to. Marcus kissing a brunette woman I didn't recognize at what looked like a company Christmas party. Marcus in bed with someone whose face was cropped out of the photo, but whose blonde hair definitely wasn't mine. There are hundreds of photos, Brittany said, her voice breaking. Going back 2 years. Maybe more. Rachel, he's been living an entire other life. I scrolled through the posts, each one a knife to whatever was left of my heart. Marcus celebrating promotions at work that he'd never mentioned to me. Marcus on vacation in places I'd never heard of, claiming he was at job sites. Marcus at parties, restaurants, events, an entire social life that had never included his wife. But the posts weren't just about him. They were about his conquests. Photos tagged with first names only, great weekend with Jessica. Sarah knows how to make a man feel appreciated. Melissa's cooking is amazing, finally found a woman who can take care of her man. He was keeping trophies, I said quietly. It gets worse. Brittany clicked to another section. Look at his private messages. What I saw there made me understand that Marcus wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a predator who had turned manipulation into an art form. The messages revealed his method with chilling clarity. He would target women who were lonely, vulnerable, or going through difficult times. He'd present himself as a separated man in the process of divorce, someone who needed emotional support while dealing with his unstable wife. He'd gain their trust, their sympathy, and eventually their love before finding ways to benefit financially from the relationship. Jessica, the brunette from the Christmas party photos, had loaned him $8,000 for legal fees related to his divorce. Sarah had been paying for hotel rooms for their meetings. Melissa had bought him a new laptop, a watch, and had been subsidizing his car payments for 6 months. All while he was married to me and supposedly planning a future with Brittany. He's a sociopath, I said, finally understanding the clinical term for what I'd been living with. There's more. Brittany's voice was barely audible. Look at what he said about you. She scrolled to a conversation with someone named Amanda, dated just 3 weeks ago. Marcus, the wife is getting worse. Had another episode last night. I'm really worried she might hurt herself. Amanda. Oh honey, that sounds so scary. You're so strong for dealing with this. Marcus. Some days I don't know if I can keep going. But I made vows, you know? For better or worse. I can't abandon her when she needs help. Amanda. You're such a good man. Not many would stick by someone who's mentally ill. Marcus. It's hard though. She's gained so much weight, stopped taking care of herself completely. Sometimes I look at her and I just feel empty. Like I'm mourning the woman I married. Amanda. That must be so lonely for you. Marcus. It is. God, Amanda. You have no idea how lonely it gets. I stared at the screen, reading his words over and over. He'd been describing me to other women as a mentally ill, overweight burden while simultaneously planning to steal my inheritance and have me committed. But what struck me most wasn't the cruelty, it was the calculation. Every word was carefully chosen to make these women feel sorry for him, to see him as a noble martyr rather than a cheating husband. He was building sympathy while also explaining why his wife never appeared in his life, why they had to meet in secret, why he couldn't introduce them to his friends or family. Brittany, I said, closing the laptop because I couldn't look at any more, how many women are we talking about? I counted at least 12 over the past 2 years. Some were just a few dates, others went on for months. But Rachel. She leaned forward, her eyes wide with fear. I think he's done this before. Long before he met any of us. What do you mean? Look at this. She opened her phone and showed me a screenshot of a public record search. Marcus has been married 4 times. 4 times, Rachel. You were wife number 4. The world tilted. That's impossible. He told me I was his first marriage. Wife number 1 divorced him in 1999 for adultery and financial fraud. Wife number 2 disappeared in 2003 and filed for divorce from out of state, claiming domestic abuse. Wife number 3 died in 2007. My blood turned to ice. Died how? Car accident. Single vehicle. She lost control and drove into a tree. Brittany's voice was shaking. She'd just inherited money from her grandmother. $300,000. The room went silent except for the sound of my own breathing. A car accident. Just like mine. Just like the one that nearly killed me on my way to tell Marcus about my inheritance. Brittany, I said slowly, what kind of car hit me? I don't know. Marcus just said it was an accident. I pulled out my phone and called the police department, asking to speak to the officer who'd handled my accident report. Officer Martinez? This is Rachel Coleman. I was in the accident on Route 42 last week. Yes, I'm recovering well, thank you. I have a question about the other driver. A silver Mercedes-Benz 350. You said he wasn't cited? Even though he ran the red light. Brittany watched my face go white as I listened to the officer's explanation. Thank you, I said finally, ending the call. What did he say? The other driver claimed I ran the red light. His story was that I was driving erratically, speeding, and drove straight through the intersection without stopping. There were no witnesses, so it became a matter of his word against my unconscious body. But the light was red for him. The traffic camera was conveniently broken that day. Had been for a week, apparently. I stared at my phone, pieces clicking into place. Brittany, what was Marcus doing the day of my accident? She thought for a moment. He said he was at a job site. But when he got the call about your accident, he was with me. We were having lunch. Where? About 2 miles from where your accident happened. 2 miles. Close enough to follow me. Close enough to see me driving toward his worksite, excited and distracted, probably singing along to the radio. Close enough to arrange for a silver Mercedes to run a red light at exactly the right moment. Brittany, I said, standing up abruptly, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to call Marcus and tell him you want to meet tonight. Tell him you've been thinking about what we discussed, about me being unreasonable with the money, and you want to help him figure out a solution. Her face went pale. You think he tried to kill you? I think my husband has done this before, and I think is going to do it again if we don't stop him. I grabbed her hand. But I need proof. Real proof. The kind that will hold up in court. What if he's dangerous? What if he realizes I know the truth? Then we make sure you're never alone with him. And we make sure everything is recorded. Brittany stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. What do you need me to do? Get him to admit what he's been planning. All of it. The affairs, the money, the commitment scheme. Everything. How? Tell him I'm getting suspicious. Tell him you're worried I might not go along with transferring the inheritance. Make him think you're on his side, that you want to help him get the money before I figure out how to protect it. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. What if this doesn't work? Then we go to the police with what we have and hope it's enough. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. Suspicious circumstances and coincidental timing weren't proof of attempted murder. And Marcus was too smart to leave obvious evidence. No, if I was going to stop him permanently, I needed him to confess. I needed him to reveal his true nature so completely that no court, no jury, and no future victim would ever doubt what kind of man he really was. That evening, I sat in my car across the street from the Riverside Motel, watching room 237 through a pair of binoculars I'd bought that afternoon. Detective Chen had provided me with a high-end recording device, small enough to fit in Brittany's purse and sensitive enough to pick up conversation from across a room. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. Asterisk is here. Going in now. Asterisk. Through the motel window, I could see shadows moving behind the thin curtains. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Everything depended on the next hour. Brittany had called Marcus that afternoon, her voice perfectly pitched between panic and seduction. She told him she was scared, that I'd seemed different when she saw me at the coffee shop, more alert, asking strange questions about their relationship. She said she was worried I was getting suspicious and might try to hide the money before he could access it. Marcus had taken the bait immediately, agreeing to meet her at their place to discuss strategy. The recording device transmitted everything to my phone in real time. I plugged in my earbuds and listened as their voices came through clearly. Baby, you look stressed, Marcus was saying. Come here. I can't stop thinking about what you told me, Brittany replied. About Rachel getting suspicious. What if she figures out we've been meeting? She won't. Rachel's not smart enough to put the pieces together. Besides, even if she did, what's she going to do? Divorce me? I'd get half of everything anyway. But what about the trust she set up? What if she can protect the money somehow? There was a pause, then Marcus laughed, a cold sound that sent chills down my spine. Brittany, baby, you don't understand how this works. That trust doesn't mean anything. I've already talked to my lawyer about having her declared mentally incompetent. Do you know how easy it is to prove someone is unstable when they've been in a car accident that caused brain trauma? But she seems fine. She seemed really sharp when I talked to her. That's what makes it perfect. She'll have good days and bad days. Episodes. Confusion. All I have to do is document the bad days, and any judge will see that she needs someone to manage her affairs. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. He was still planning to have me committed. Once I have guardianship, Marcus continued, I can dissolve the trust and move all the money wherever I want. The Cayman accounts are already set up. And then we can be together. Really together. Of course, baby. Just like we planned. Brittany's voice dropped to a whisper. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you ever done this before? Silence. Long enough that I started to worry the recording had cut out. What do you mean? Marcus asked finally. Married women for money. Had them declared incompetent. I found some things online. What kind of things? About your other wives. How many there were. How they all seemed to have accidents or disappear after they inherited money. Another long pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was different, colder, more calculating. Brittany, you need to be very careful about the questions you ask. Some things are better left alone. Did you try to hurt Rachel? The car accident. Stop. The word was sharp, dangerous. You're getting paranoid, baby. The accident was just that, an accident. Bad timing, but actually pretty convenient when you think about it. Made her more vulnerable, more dependent on me. But the timing was perfect luck. Rachel was driving like a maniac, probably high on the excitement of the inheritance, not paying attention to traffic lights. Someone was bound to hit her eventually. He was lying, but staying just vague enough to maintain deniability. I needed him to say more. Marcus, Brittany said, and I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. I'm scared. What if she doesn't cooperate with the competency hearing? What if she fights it? She won't be able to fight anything if she has another accident. The words hung in the air like poison gas. What do you mean? Nothing, baby. I'm just saying accidents happen all the time. Especially to people who are mentally unstable. People who might hurt themselves because they can't handle the pressure. You mean suicide? I mean whatever needs to happen to protect what's ours. My blood turned to ice. He was talking about killing me, and making it look like suicide. Marcus, you're scaring me. Don't be scared, baby. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know how to handle difficult situations. 15 years. Since my first wife. Jennifer was so naive, thought love was enough to make a marriage work. But she had a nice insurance policy, and I needed money for my construction business. What happened to Jennifer? Car accident. Lost control on a rainy night and hit a tree. Very tragic. I was devastated, of course. And your other wives? Mary, that's wife number 2, she was smarter. Started asking questions, hired a private investigator. Had to relocate to handle that situation. Relocate. She moved to Oregon very suddenly. Filed for divorce from there, claiming all kinds of crazy things. Mental abuse, physical violence. Complete fabrication, but I didn't contest it. Sometimes it's easier to just move on to the next opportunity. And wife number 3. Susan. His voice softened with what sounded almost like fondness. She was perfect. Sweet, trusting, just inherited $300,000 from her grandmother. We had 6 wonderful months together. What happened to her? Another car accident. She was driving to the bank to add my name to her accounts when she lost control. Very sad. I still miss her sometimes. Brittany's voice was barely audible now. Marcus, how many people have you killed? Killed? He laughed. Baby, I've never killed anyone. People have accidents. People make poor choices. I just find myself in the right place at the right time to benefit from unfortunate circumstances. But Rachel is going to have a very unfortunate accident if she doesn't cooperate. And it's going to happen soon, before she gets any smarter about protecting her money. When? Tonight. I've already set things in motion. My phone nearly slipped from my shaking hands. Tonight. What do you mean? I mean that when I leave here, I'm going home to my grieving wife who's been so depressed since her accident that she's been talking about ending it all. I have documentation of her mental state, her threats of self-harm. When the police find her body tomorrow morning, it'll be a tragic but not surprising conclusion to her struggle with depression. Oh my God. Don't worry, baby. It'll be quick and painless. She'll never know what happened. And by tomorrow afternoon, I'll be the grieving widower of a very wealthy woman who tragically couldn't handle her good fortune. Marcus, I can't be part of this. I won't. You already are part of it. His voice turned deadly serious. You know everything now, Brittany. Every detail. Which makes you either my partner or my liability. And I don't keep liabilities around. The threat was clear. Help him kill me, or join me in the grave. I understand, Brittany whispered. Good girl. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home and forget this conversation ever took place. Tomorrow, when you hear about poor Rachel's suicide, you're going to be shocked and saddened. You'll comfort me in my grief. And in a few months, when enough time has passed, we'll get married and move to the Cayman Islands to start our new life. And if I don't, then you'll have your own accident. Maybe a break-in gone wrong. Maybe a mugging. These things happen to young women who live alone. There was rustling, the sound of movement. They were getting ready to leave. Remember, Brittany, Marcus said, his voice closer to the recording device now, you've never been happier. You're excited about our future together. And you have no idea what I'm planning for tonight. I understand. I knew you were smart. That's why I chose you. The door opened and closed. Through my binoculars, I watched Marcus walk to his truck while Brittany got into her car. They left in opposite directions, playing their parts perfectly. But I had it all on recording. Every word. Every admission. Every threat. Marcus thought he was going home to kill me tonight. Instead, he was walking into the trap I'd been setting for days. Because while he was confessing his crimes to Brittany, I was sitting in a motel parking lot surrounded by unmarked police cars, and Detective Chen was listening to every word through her own receiver. The game was over. Marcus just didn't know it yet. I didn't go home that night. Instead, Detective Chen and I went to the police station, where I spent 3 hours giving my statement while a team of officers prepared to arrest Marcus. The recording was clear, comprehensive, and legally obtained with Brittany's consent as a cooperative witness. But Detective Chen had one concern. He said he'd already set things in motion for tonight, she told me as we sat in the station conference room. We need to know what that means before we move in. What do you think he's planning? Based on his confession about making your other accidents look like suicides, probably something that appears self-inflicted but doesn't require him to be physically present. That gives him an alibi. My blood chilled. Like what? Carbon monoxide poisoning. Drug overdose. Something that could look like you did it yourself while he was conveniently somewhere else. The genius of it was horrifying. Marcus would be at a bar or restaurant, surrounded by witnesses, while I died alone at home. He'd return to discover my body and play the devastated husband who couldn't save his mentally unstable wife from her own demons. So what do? We let him try. I stared at her. Excuse me. We put the house under surveillance and let Marcus make his move. When he shows up to implement whatever he's planned, we arrest him in the act. It's the difference between attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Much stronger case. And if something goes wrong? If he actually manages to? He won't. We'll have teams positioned around your house, and you'll be safely here at the station. If he tries to enter the property, we'll take him down immediately. It was a good plan. A safe plan. But it wasn't the plan I wanted. Detective Chen, I said slowly, what if there was a way to get him to confess everything? Not just about me, but about all of his wives? Jennifer, Mary, Susan, all of them. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Marcus believes he's smarter than everyone else. He's gotten away with this for 15 years because he's careful, methodical, and he thinks his victims are too stupid to see through his act. And maybe it's time someone proved him wrong. An hour later, I was sitting in my living room, waiting. The house was wired with cameras and microphones. Police snipers were positioned in the woods behind my property. Detective Chen was in an unmarked van across the street, and I was wearing a wire that would capture everything Marcus said when he came home to kill me. The plan was simple. When Marcus arrived, I would confront him with everything I knew. I would force him to choose between confessing or trying to kill me in front of a dozen witnesses. Either way, his reign of terror would end tonight. At 11:47 p.m., I heard his truck in the driveway. Marcus came through the front door quietly, probably expecting to find me asleep. Instead, I was sitting in the living room with all the lights on, wearing the blue dress I'd worn to tell him about the inheritance. Rachel. He looked genuinely surprised. What are you doing up so late? Waiting for you. Something in my tone made him cautious. Are you feeling okay? You look different. I feel fine, Marcus. Better than I've felt in years, actually. That's good. That's really good. He set down his keys and walked toward me slowly, like he was approaching a dangerous animal. I was worried about you after the accident. Head injuries can be tricky. Yes, they can be. Just like car accidents in general. He stopped moving. What do you mean? I mean accidents happen all the time, don't they? Especially to women who've recently inherited large amounts of money. The color drained from his face. Rachel, you're not making sense. I'm making perfect sense. Just like Jennifer made sense when she started asking questions about your first marriage. Just like Mary made sense when she hired that private investigator. Just like Susan made sense when she wanted to wait before adding your name to her accounts. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Just like you knew exactly what you were doing when you arranged for that Mercedes to hit me on Route 42. That's insane. You were in an accident. A random accident. I stood up slowly, my eyes never leaving his face. There's nothing random about you, Marcus. Everything you do is planned, calculated, methodical. 15 years of practice has made you very good at what you do. You're having an episode, he said, backing toward the door. The head injury is making you paranoid. You need help. The only thing I need help with is understanding how I lived with a serial killer for 8 years without realizing it. He stopped backing away. Something in his posture changed, became more dangerous. Serial killer? Rachel, you're really losing it now. Am I? Or am I finally seeing clearly for the first time? I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the motel room. His own voice filled the air, cold and calculating as he described his plans to kill me. Marcus listened to himself confessing, and I watched him transform before my eyes. The mask he'd worn for so long, the charming husband, the devoted partner, the grieving widower, fell away completely. What remained was something cold and empty and utterly without conscience. "You clever little bitch," he said quietly. "Not as clever as you, though. 15 years, 4 wives, and you never got caught. That's impressive." He smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on a human face. "You have no idea what you've done. I've stopped you from killing me. I've stopped you from killing anyone else." "Have you?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a garage door opener. "Do you know what this is, Rachel?" My blood turned to ice. "This is a remote detonator. While you were playing detective, I was rigging your car with enough explosives to make sure you never leave this house alive." He held up the device, his thumb hovering over the button. "One press, and your Honda becomes a fireball that'll take half the street with it." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Want to test that theory?" We stared at each other across the living room, predator and prey, locked in a standoff that would determine whether I lived or died. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said calmly. "You're going to give me that phone with the recording. Then you're going to transfer every penny of that inheritance into my accounts. And then you're going to walk out to your car and turn the key. And if I don't, then I press this button and kill you right now. Either way, you're dead. But if you cooperate, I'll make it quick." I felt something I'd never experienced before, a calm, cold certainty that cut through my fear like a blade. "Marcus," I said softly, "there's something you should know." "What?" "I'm not the same woman you married. I'm not the pathetic, broken victim you thought you could manipulate and destroy." "Is that supposed to scare me?" "No. This is." I smiled and pulled a second device from behind the couch cushion, an identical remote detonator. "You see, while you were confessing your crimes to Brittany, I was having a very interesting conversation with your friend who drives the silver Mercedes. Amazing what people will admit when they think they're about to be arrested as accessories to attempted murder." Marcus's face went white. He told me all about your arrangement. How you paid him to hit me, how you promised it would just be a minor accident to make me more dependent on you. He also told me about the explosive device you asked him to plant in my car. "That's impossible." "Is it?" "You've gotten sloppy, Marcus. 15 years of success made you overconfident. You started trusting the wrong people." I held up the detonator so he could see it clearly. "This device is connected to the bomb in your truck, not my car. The same bomb your Mercedes driving friend moved from my Honda to your Ford while you were busy confessing to Brittany." Marcus looked toward the window, toward his truck in the driveway, then back at me. "You're lying." "Want to test that theory?" For the first time in our 8-year marriage, I saw fear in Marcus Coleman's eyes. "The police are already here," I continued. "They've been listening to every word. Your truck is surrounded. The house is surrounded. There's nowhere to run." As if summoned by my words, Detective Chen's voice came through a bullhorn outside. "Marcus Coleman, this is the police. Drop your weapon and come out with your hands up." Marcus stared at me with naked hatred. "You have no idea what you've started. I've ended it. No more wives. No more accidents. No more innocent women trusting you with their hearts while you plan their deaths." He raised the detonator, his thumb moving toward the button. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Press it. Blow up your own truck and destroy the last piece of evidence connecting you to 15 years of murder." His hand trembled with rage, but he didn't press the button. Because even in his fury, Marcus was too smart to destroy his only bargaining chip. The front door exploded inward, and armed police officers flooded the room. Marcus was on the ground in handcuffs before he could blink, the detonator safely in police custody. As they dragged him toward the door, he looked back at me one last time. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes," I said quietly, "it is." And for the first time in 8 years, I actually believed it. 3 months later, I stood in a courtroom in downtown Cleveland, watching Marcus Coleman receive 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The evidence against him had been overwhelming. The recording from the motel room, testimony from multiple victims, forensic evidence linking him to Susan's accident, and financial records showing his pattern of targeting and exploiting vulnerable women. But perhaps the most damning evidence had come from an unexpected source: his own arrogance. During his arrest, Marcus had been so enraged by what he saw as my betrayal that he confessed everything to the police, apparently believing that his superior intelligence would somehow get him out of trouble. He described in detail how he'd killed Jennifer, how he'd driven Mary out of state after she became suspicious, how he'd staged Susan's accident, and how he'd planned to kill me. The prosecution had called it the most comprehensive confession in the history of Ohio criminal law. As the judge read the sentences, life for Jennifer's murder, life for Susan's murder, life for the attempted murder of me, and life for conspiracy in Mary's disappearance, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. Brittany Walsh sat in the row behind me, her face pale but determined. She testified against Marcus, describing in painful detail how he'd manipulated her, the lies he'd told, the way he'd planned to use her as an accomplice in my murder. The young woman who'd once called me pathetic had become one of my strongest allies, and our shared trauma had forged an unlikely friendship. "He can never hurt anyone again," she whispered as the bailiff led Marcus away in shackles. "No," I agreed, watching my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, disappear through the courthouse doors for the last time. "He can't." But the real victory hadn't been the trial or the conviction. It had been what happened afterward. Using Margaret's inheritance, I'd established the Coleman Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors, an organization dedicated to helping women escape abusive relationships and rebuild their lives. We provided legal assistance, financial support, safe housing, and most importantly, the kind of comprehensive background checks that could have prevented Marcus from victimizing so many women. If you've ever felt trapped in a relationship that was slowly destroying you, if you've ever wondered if the person you loved was actually your worst enemy, then you understand why this work matters, I'd said during the Foundation's launch press conference. Nobody should have to discover they are married to a monster. Nobody should have to survive attempted murder to realize they deserve better. The Foundation had grown rapidly, funded not just by my inheritance but by donations from hundreds of people who'd heard the story and wanted to help. We'd assisted over 300 women in our first year of operation, and our background check service had already prevented 12 potential victims from falling into relationships with men who had histories of domestic violence. Detective Sarah Chen had become the Foundation's Director of Investigations, using her skills to help potential victims learn the truth about their partners before it was too late. Her team had uncovered everything from hidden criminal records to secret families to elaborate financial frauds. "Knowledge is power," she told every client. "And power is safety." But perhaps the most unexpected development had been my relationship with Marcus's other victims. Mary Thompson, wife number 2, had contacted me after seeing news coverage of the trial. She'd spent 15 years living in hiding, terrified that Marcus would find her and kill her for escaping. Her relief at learning he was finally behind bars was overwhelming. "I used to have nightmares that he'd track me down," she told me during our first phone conversation. "I changed my name, my appearance, my entire life. I've been looking over my shoulder for 15 years. "You don't have to look anymore," I assured her. Jennifer's family, her parents and 2 sisters, had also reached out. They'd always suspected that Marcus had killed their daughter, but they'd never been able to prove it. The trial had finally given them the closure they'd been seeking for 2 decades. "Jennifer would be so proud of you," her mother told me at the sentencing hearing. "You did what we couldn't do. You stopped him." Even Susan's relatives had found some peace in Marcus's conviction. Her brother flew in from California to attend the trial, and he'd hugged me with tears streaming down his face when the guilty verdict was read. "She didn't die for nothing," he'd whispered. "Her death helped save your life, and your survival helped save all the women who would have come after you." That perspective, that my survival had meaning beyond just my own life, had become my driving force. Every day I worked at the Foundation was another day that Marcus couldn't hurt anyone. Every woman we helped was a victory over the kind of evil he represented. But the most profound change had been internal. The woman who'd stood in that lawyer's office 9 months ago, Learning about her inheritance while her husband planned her destruction was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable of recognizing her own worth. I'd filed for divorce immediately after Marcus's arrest, and it had been finalized within 6 months. The process was surprisingly painless. Marcus had no grounds to contest anything, and his criminal conviction had voided any claim he might have had to community property. I'd kept our house long enough to sell it and donate the proceeds to a women's shelter. Then I'd bought a small apartment in downtown Cleveland, walking distance from the foundation's offices. It was the first home I'd ever chosen entirely for myself, and I loved everything about it. The hardwood floors, the brick walls, the view of Lake Erie from my bedroom window. I'd also started dating again, cautiously but optimistically. His name was David Harrison, no relation to my inheritance lawyer, and he was a social worker who specialized in trauma recovery. He was kind, patient, and utterly transparent about his past, his finances, and his intentions. He'd even insisted that I run a background check on him through our foundation services. "I want you to feel completely safe with me," he'd said on our 3rd date. "I want you to know that you can trust me with your heart." Trust. Such a simple concept that had become so complicated for me. But slowly, carefully, I was learning to trust again. To trust others, to trust my own judgment, and most importantly, to trust that I deserved love that didn't come with conditions or hidden agendas. This morning, exactly 1 year after I'd first heard Margaret's name from that lawyer's office, I stood in the Foundation's conference room, looking out at an audience of survivors, supporters, and journalists. I was about to give a speech at our annual fundraising gala, but first, I wanted to share something personal. A year ago, I thought my story was ending. I was married to a man who saw me as an obstacle to his happiness, not as a partner in building a life together. I felt invisible, worthless, and completely alone. I paused, scanning the audience until I found David's encouraging smile in the 3rd row. But sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is exactly what you need to discover what you actually deserve. The applause was warm and sustained, but I held up my hand for quiet. "I want to read something to you. It's from a letter my great-aunt Margaret left for me, and it changed my life in ways I'm still discovering." I pulled out the worn piece of paper, the same letter I'd read in Mr. Harrison's office a year ago. She wrote, "You are good people, Rachel Coleman. And good people deserve good things." That simple statement became my North Star during the darkest period of my life. It reminded me that my worth wasn't determined by how someone else treated me, but by who I chose to be. I folded the letter and looked back at the audience. Tonight, I want every person in this room to remember that you are good people. You deserve good things. You deserve love that builds you up instead of tearing you down. You deserve partners who see your strength, not your vulnerabilities. You deserve to feel safe in your own life. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Later that evening, as David and I walked along Lake Erie's shoreline, I thought about all the ways my life had changed. The inheritance had certainly transformed my circumstances, but it was Margaret's words, and my decision to believe them, that had truly saved me. "Penny for your thoughts," David said, taking my hand as we paused to watch the sunset over the water. "I'm thinking about second chances," I replied. "About how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened." "Do you really believe that?" I thought about Marcus, about the years of manipulation and abuse, about the accident that nearly killed me, about the terror of discovering I'd been married to a serial killer. Then I thought about the foundation, about the women we'd helped, about the love I'd found with David, about the peace I felt when I looked in the mirror now. "Yes," I said finally. "I really do." We walked back toward town as the stars came out, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely excited about the future. Not because I knew what it would bring, but because I trusted myself to handle whatever came next. Behind me, Lake Erie stretched endlessly into the darkness, vast and beautiful and full of possibilities I'd never imagined. Just like the life I was finally learning to live. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt trapped or manipulated or invisible in your own life, please share it. Please subscribe to this channel for more stories of survival and transformation. And most importantly, please remember that your story isn't over yet. You are good people. And good people deserve good things. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community of survivors and thrivers. Until next time, remember that your voice matters, your experiences are valid, and your future is still being written.